Well, good morning, Nat.
Hey Pete, what have you been up to?
Oh man, I am pumped up. I got to tell you, Anthony Robbins. I was with Anthony Robbins. You've been to a bunch of his webinars, or excuse me, his events, right?
Yeah, yeah, the good old days when
yeah,
we would get together with people.
yeah, right. And so I've been to a bunch of his events, but I got to tell you, this last weekend I was at one of his events.
Okay.
And and it's interesting, right? We always talk about how entrepreneurs are problem solvers, right? So
Right.
here's Tony Robbins, right? He gets 10,000 people into the Staples Center, and he spends 4 days changing their lives, right? And that's his brand, right? And he loves it. It's passion. You can get it, right? And COVID-19 shuts it down worldwide. He can't do anything. So being an entrepreneur, and I think he's got like 74 businesses or something. So what he does is he builds this studio. I mean, it's got like 30-foot ceilings, and he puts 1,500 monitors in the front of him and 1,500 in the back. He designs it just to do a Zoom session.
Well, 1,500 is a lot. It was 1,500.
Yeah, 1,500 in the front, 1,500 in the back, right? It's this huge studio. And then he's got all these cameras. And so he basically does the event on a Zoom. He knows the guy that is running Zoom.
Yeah,
basically
of course he
sets it up so that he has, instead of 10,000 people, he has 40,000 people from around the world, right? 180 countries or something like that. And he does this Zoom session for 4 days. I'm telling you, 60 hours of Zoom sessions. I mean, It was crazy, right? So I start thinking about this. The guy's brilliant. So here's the deal, right? So he takes a problem where he can't do what he's doing normally, and he builds a studio. And instead of having 10,000 people, he gets 40,000 people paying about the same amount. He's quadrupled his revenue. Right. And he's also reduced his expenses because he's not renting out Staples Center. Right.
Yeah.
So quadruples his revenue, reduces his expenses. Now here's even better. So now he gets 40,000 people on this thing. Now he has the ability to sell them the next program. So he has 4 times as many people to sell his next program to. It's brilliant, right? Entrepreneurs figure out how to solve problems, and not only to solve a problem, but he quadrupled his business, I suspect. It's absolutely amazing. So I'm pretty pumped up. It was a great experience. So I encourage anybody to do an Anthony Robbins event. The virtual session was really good. So.
Yeah, that's we've seen that with a lot of the franchise brands we work with too. It's like when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? And they really, figure it out, and ultimately will make them stronger long term.
Yeah, he used the example in this in the seminar, right, where he talks about how business owners, they solve stuff, right? So he talked about 2 restaurants that are a mile apart from each other, right? And when COVID-19, one restaurant, basically they freaked out, they just shut their doors, closed down, that kind of stuff. Another restaurant says, hey, listen, we got to figure this out. So they went and basically redid all their seating. They basically set it up so that they went and got a bunch of stuff, and they created a pavilion thing where people could sit outside and do takeout. And literally one shut down, the other one starts thriving, literally a line down the street to do, takeout. So we solve problems.
That's what you gotta do.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, what I thought we would do is talk a little bit about franchise resales, and more so this idea of investing in franchising, right? We want to talk about resales, not necessarily about buying them, but this idea, and we talk about it in the book, Hire Yourself, right? That when we invest in a franchise, we want to have the end in mind, right? We want to have our exit strategy from that standpoint. So I thought we'd talk about that a little bit today. Sound good?
Definitely. It's really, when I bought my first franchise, I was 29 years old, right? So I was kind of the young buck. I was at the corporate headquarters for training for Comfort Keepers. I bought a senior care, and it was so interesting because like literally within the first 30 minutes in the training, the founder was kind of starting with this, begin with the end in mind concept. And I'm like, I'm like at the starting line. I was just, wanting to figure out how to, do the most basic things, but he was like, start with the end in mind. And so that was immensely helpful because I just remember, back to that. And it kind of puts everything into perspective of why you're doing it. I like that one concept too. It's like, don't start your day before you finish it. And with that concept, it's like, you know what you're going to try to accomplish for that day or that week or that month or that year before you even start it.
Yeah, and I don't think when we start talking about exit in mind or planning your exit in advance, it doesn't mean that, hey, listen, I'm gonna own it for 10 years in one day. I don't think it's quite that defined, but it's
Right.
understanding kind of where you're going to take this to, and then what is your exit strategy. So as franchises, I mean, there's many opportunities, right? You're building this business, you're part of a franchise system. So when you sold your franchise, how did you do that? How did you
Yeah,
sell
I
your
was,
franchise?
and that's the cool thing too. I think, a lot of times people are like, when you are starting a franchise, you kind of like can be like, oh, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. But I actually were, a franchise, there's lots of opportunities for resales. So when I bought my franchise, I built it up actually fairly quickly because I'm a go-getter. And the process was pretty easy. I actually just hired a local business broker because I didn't know really any. It was my first rodeo with
Yeah.
with a resale. So I hired a business broker, and then he kind of helped me with you get all the papers and the financials and the kind of the presentation book, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting as we went through that process. We kind of what's important to people that are looking to buy a franchise resale is basically what kind of systems, processes, operations manuals, people like your team. It was eye opening to work with a business broker as we were kind of going through that process.
And resales of franchises are more attractive to people, right? Because as you sell your franchise, you're handing it over to the new person, right? You've got that transition, but that the person that's buying the business also has all the support and the training from the franchisor.
Totally.
So I mean, to me, there's a lot more appeal to that because you're not going it alone as you take over that business.
Yeah, I think usually when you buy a business, like, there's always kind of like that one blank that you fill in, and it's like, how much training or support is the seller offering? And usually it's like 2 weeks, sometimes it's 30 days. But what's nice is with a franchise resale that you actually, you can put that, the seller's going to help you for 2 weeks or 30 days, but the franchise, it's basically unlimited and it's forever, right? So it's like you go to training and you have all the resources of the regional developer, the parent company, the other owners throughout the U.S.
Yeah. Now you obviously used a broker, right? But we see a lot of resales where I'll call it kind of a hand raiser, right? So I own my franchise. I've been doing it for 10 years. I decide I want to get out of Illinois. I want to get out of the high taxes and certainly the cold weather. And I'm going to move to Florida. I'm thinking about retiring. I can go back to the franchisor and say, hey, listen, I'm if anybody's interested in this area, I might be interested in selling. We see some of that out there. I mean, that's pretty common in terms of people selling their franchises. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's an important function of the franchisor is the ability to help the system basically sell the franchise resales in the system. I think if I remember at one point, like maybe 1 to 2% of franchise system is either for sale or maybe they're thinking about selling or retiring or what have you. I kind of think of it like Toyota and their used car market, right? Where because they have a strong used car market, they've done a good job with the residual values and all that, then it makes their new car sales really strong too. So I think it's an important function for the franchisor. Or should we use the Ford? Should we use the Ford example instead?
No,
Pete?
you're killing me here. You're killing me. I like my Fords, absolutely. So, all right. So resales, they can go to a broker, they can go back to the franchisor and a hand raiser. But when we start talking about resales, it's really hard to find a good one, isn't it? I mean, it's tough to find a good one.
Yeah, I would say it's like a needle in a haystack because well, you and I did that one podcast. What was that guy's? I'm trying to. What was his name? He had the Molly Maid, but he I think he's in his 70s and he just loves what he's doing, and it's kind of like a semi-absentee business for him, right? So
yeah,
the good resales are pretty hard to find, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think so. That's right. And when we sell our franchise or we're looking to buy a franchise, the franchisors have rules, right? They say, hey, listen,
Yeah.
if you're going to sell your franchise to this person, one, we have to approve them. right? So one, they have to approve them, and then generally, yeah, I think you have to pay a transfer fee. Is that right? So you have to pay a
Yeah.
transfer fee to transfer the rights from you to the new person. So
Mhm.
certainly, there's a little bit to it.
Yeah. I always think, like, I think it's always smart if you're looking at a franchise resale is actually to talk to the parent company pretty early on, because, you know, it goes back to the same thing as when you're looking to invest in a franchise. It's basically, you know, is it a good fit at you as the buyer? You know, would you be doing things that you enjoy or play to your strengths, right? All those type of things. And, you know, you want to learn about the culture of the franchise and all that. It's, I don't, I don't really encourage guys to make these decisions just based on a spreadsheet. I think there's so much more that goes into joining a franchise system or a network of franchise owners.
Certainly, it's a partnership, right? It's a
Yes.
long-term partnership, and it's beyond numbers from that
Yeah.
standpoint. So for that standpoint, it makes sense. When we talk about a franchise, we look at it and it's a resale. A lot of times people say, I just want to walk into that immediate cash flow, right? But they're going to pay a multiple for that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I like to talk to people about is, can you beat the clock? Right. So if you
Yes.
buy that franchise and you're going to pay a multiple of 3, can you buy the rights to a territory that you like? So it's your backyard, you get the geographic area, and you go out there and you work really hard and you're a go-getter like you, and you can beat the clock, build it faster than if you were to buy it at an existing level.
Yeah. I think it's kind of that 6 of one, half dozen of another, right? It's like there's always just the different trade-offs. You can pay a little bit of a premium, get something up and running, but there might be some things you need to fix, or it might not be your ideal location or geography or territory. Starting from scratch, you get that perfect territory, build your own team, but you're going to have to ramp up probably over a 3-year period.
Yeah. Well, or faster, it just depends, right? You try to beat the clock. So as you look at it, I know you've bought and sold businesses from that standpoint, and from evaluating franchises in terms of resales. Any thoughts you give people? I know one, you said, hey, it's not about spreadsheets. What else would advice, if you're looking at a resale, would you give people?
I think to me the biggest variable is whether or not you have to really understand what the existing franchise owner is doing day to day, and see if you're basically as a buyer, if you're buying a glorified job or if you're actually buying a business. Because if you're just buying a job, we only have so many hours in a day. So if the existing owner is working 40, 50, 60 hours and he's doing XYZ, whatever the business is, then you need to be prepared to do that. And you're kind of, buying yourself a job. But if it's more of a business, I think that's much more valuable, to be honest, because I know I'd pay a lot more if I could, replace my income and work, 10 or 15 hours a week versus replace my income and work 60 hours a week.
Let me know when you find that one that's 10 or 15 hours. I might go in on it with you. No, that's
but yeah,
for
kind
sure.
of that semi-absentee. And then I think a lot of times people are looking for a franchise resale specifically. They're looking, like, a new buyer is looking like, how can I improve and make this better? So do I have contacts or experience? And usually, like, almost all business is driven by sales and marketing, right? So does the new franchise buyer have the ability to do sales and marketing? If the existing business is mostly B2C, can the new owner come in and develop, B2B as an example, right? And grow revenue or diversify it. So there's typically lots of opportunities. Franchising is always evolving. I feel like, a lot of times the new guys will do really well because they be more open to new ideas.
Yeah, franchises evolve over time, right? And it changes.
Totally.
So one thing is, you kind of come in, can I take it to the next level, right? Can I take the business to the next level? I think another one that I think about a little bit is the team. The people that, as you buy the business, it's really important that you understand what you're buying in terms of people, and they could all leave the day you invest in the business, right? Unless you set up some things, anchors to keep them. But do you see that too?
Yeah, totally. I think when people are buying a franchise resale, they're trying to hedge against risk, right? So with retail, I think it makes, a good amount of sense, because then you have like a proven location, right? Where you have like the foot traffic and all that. when it comes to a service business, I think, I don't think the location's as important, right? Because you're typically going to the customers at that point. You're just doing more sales and marketing. I think it's, six of one, half dozen of another, to be honest.
Yes, and I think sometimes with resales, that you might be buying somebody else's problem, right? And when I
That's
look
an
at
understatement.
businesses,
Yeah.
right. Whether it's something, and I think it's something simple like they're not doing well and they want to get the heck out of that lease, right?
Right.
They want to get their name off that lease, and so they sell the business so that now you own that problem of that lease. Do you see that
Right.
a lot?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, a lot of times, if you've been in the industry for a long time, you might know things that are coming down the pipe 1 or 2 years in the future. So, there might be a reason why you're trying to exit. So I think you have to do a lot of homework and due diligence and turn over the rocks and make sure that, you're trying to manage your risk as far as future landmines.
Yeah. So resales, there's some good stuff with it and there's some not so good stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as we always talk about this idea of knowing where we want to go in the future, as you think about franchises, I mean, it seems like there's so much more opportunity with new concepts, new territories where you can get exactly where you want. And it's really hard to find resales. I mean, so when we look at a scale, I think it's skewed a little bit more towards looking towards that new territory, that new franchise concept, because there's just more opportunity opposed to buying something existing. And something existing can be a little bit sexy, but when you weigh it out, I think it tips more towards, looking at something new.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this with a different project I'm working on, but there's this concept of deal fatigue. So a lot of times when you're trying to buy a franchise resale, you need to have a really motivated seller. And regardless of franchise or just a regular business, it's like you need to have a very motivated seller, you need to have a very motivated buyer, and a lot of things have to kind of align. I've worked with so many people that started with me, to look at a resale and buy a business, and they, get to the finish line, and then the seller kind of craps out on them, and they're just like, I've changed my mind. It's like, oh my God. It's like, how, it's like, that is, I have guys literally that's happened to 2 or 3 times. So I think you can kind of get that deal fatigue. And then finally it's like, actually starting my own thing in my own backyard could be genius, because then I don't have to mess around, with all these other, million variables to try to get a deal across the finish line. Right.
Yeah. I mean, when I was looking for businesses, I spent a lot of time looking for resales, and you try to find those resales that, are driving kind of to replace that corporate level income. And, I look, and it was very hard to find because most of them are sold before you ever get to them. Right.
Yeah. They're
And
like
then,
a pocket listing.
yeah,
They never
right.
really go on
Right.
the
It is
market.
absolutely right. So they're really hard to find. And then the ones that are still there, there's something in the closet, right? You got to
Right.
find we'll use the term turd, right? And so I ultimately kind of started with this idea. I wanted to get a resale that could immediately replace my corporate level income. And ultimately I invested in a new territory with a franchise, right? Because it just, to your point, it was just, I thought there was more opportunity when it was all said and done.
I think it's good to be open-minded. I think it's good sometimes to take a parallel path, so that you can check the box. But it's, again, I think it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another. It depends on, I think a lot of times it depends on somebody's confidence in themselves and their ability to perform. I mean, if you have been successful in corporate and basically everything you've ever done, I'm pretty confident, if you pick the right franchise, you'll be successful at that too, right?
Yeah. Well, you bring your leadership skills, your business acumen, you leverage a good proven franchise system, and you go make it happen, right? And
Exactly.
like you're a go-getter. You get it done, and you solve problems, and you build the business. So, all right. Well, again, as you look to invest in a business, you got to kind of know what your exit strategy is. It's really important, and there's opportunities when you put it that way. Well, I got to get back to working on my stuff for my Anthony Robbins training. So we got to finish up here because I'm excited about.
Are you going to get some more monitors so you can do more Zooms?
Yeah, well, my wife doesn't like the idea of building a Zoom studio in our house, so I don't know if I can do that, but it's absolutely amazing.
It's a business expense.
Yeah. Well, you think about 40,000 people on a Zoom, and they had the capability of taking and putting people in like breakout rooms, 4 people to a breakout room.
Oh my gosh.
Can you think about the technology associated with doing that without any kind of hitches? I mean, it was an amazing experience. So, all right, my friend, spring is here. Go enjoy it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you, Pete.
Thanks for listening to the Hire Yourself podcast. For more resources, check out our website at hireyourself.com. And remember to subscribe to this podcast to receive each episode. Please leave us a rating, and we'd love to hear your feedback or suggestions for topics.